Welcome back to ADHD Realities. I'm your host, Leanne Borneman, sexologist, ADHD expert, and this is the podcast we get into all things ADHD sexuality in a way that research still sucks at. So here you get the no BS, and we talk about the topics that most people aren't talking about, including research, and today's episode is no different. Today's topic is oral as vulva owners. Yep, you heard it. Receiving oral as a vulva owner, as a woman. This is the episode for you. We are going to learn our ADHD lens, better understand why we may be struggling to show up and receive oral and be comfortable with it, and then finding some ways and approaches on how to manage this differently. As always, these episodes are sprinkles of help. If you are struggling, you're distressed, please reach out to a qualified professional and work with somebody that you can unpack a little bit deeper than this episode can provide. A disclaimer here, unfortunately, today's topic is coming packed with clinical observations, objectivity, empirical data on ADHD, and some levels of sexuality. But unfortunately, I got bad news for you peeps. There is no research on the intersection of ADHD and receiving oral as a vulva owner. But not to fret, we're going to get into it. And hopefully at the end of today's episode, you are going to feel a little bit more empowered and better equipped on how to handle and approach oral if you so choose. And at the end of today's episode, I will also be answering a few questions that have been submitted anonymously. And so if after all the information I share on this topic is still maybe not hitting home, maybe the answers to those questions will help. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? So first thing is I want to talk about something that gets overlooked, right? Receiving oral sex is marketed as effortless by a majority of people. But for a lot of women, especially women with ADHD, whom I've worked with and whom I've met, it's actually a high pressure situation. And so the messaging around oral sex for women can be very complicated, wild even, I'll use that word. Because on one hand, we're told it's the ultimate gesture of care and pleasure from a partner, something you're supposed to enjoy, something you're supposed to luxuriate in, right? Melt into. Ooh. But on the other hand, we're often left to navigate a lot of internalized shame, performance pressure, and a nervous system that sometimes acts like it's on fire. So now add ADHD into the mix, and not for nothing, but your cortisol is kind of cooked up in this moment. And so I'm going to break it down in a few reasons why oral sex can feel very complex, especially when we're using an ADHD lens, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of gendered socialization and the guilt of receiving. And this is a doozy. This one's big. This is something that I've noticed as a significant pattern working with a variety of clients. And, you know, when you think about it from a young age, many women are taught explicitly or implicitly, does not matter, that their job, our job, is to make others comfortable, right? Be easygoing. Don't be a pain in the ass. Don't take up too much space, right? Don't be a high maintenance bitch, right? Like, these are the messages that we receive, okay? And so think about it. You're in bed with somebody who says, just lie back, relax. Your internal monologue is going to freaking start screaming. Am I taking too long? Do they like doing this? Or are they just pretending? Should I say thank you? Does this feel selfish? I mean, all of these thoughts start percolating in a person's brain. And again, this is not going to be everyone. So if you have a great relationship with oral, then pause this episode. This episode is not for you. I'm talking to the women and the vulva owners with ADHD. There is a disconnect here, right? And so it's important to name this. This specific thing that we're talking about right now is pleasure guilt. And it's fucking real. And when your brain already struggles with emotional regulation, rejection sensitivity, if you're someone who is experiencing it, hyper awareness of other people's emotions and moods, like so many of us ADHDers do experience, it becomes that much harder to stay grounded in the experience. And so you're more likely to check out. You're more likely to avoid, right? There's this other thing that's also important to bring up when we're using our ADHD lens, specifically talking about the nervous system, right? So I'm gonna get into the neuroscience realm. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do know a thing or two. And when we look at the ADHD brain, it's more frequently in a survival mode than when we're looking at neurotypical brains. Because our nervous system is always scanning for possible threats or things in our environment, both emotionally, both physically. And that means being watched or being seen in the bedroom during sex can actually trigger a lot of vulnerability instead of pleasure for a lot of people. And keep in mind, this experience doesn't also have to just do with ADHD. This is also trauma response related experiences as well. And so, receiving oral, when you think about it, it requires lying still, being watched, having someone hyper focused on your body. I don't know about you, but that's fucking uncomfortable as shit for a lot of us. And for some, that may sound great in theory, like, yeah, cool, you get to lay back, relax, enjoy. And maybe that's why your partner doesn't understand why you don't want to receive oral, because it's like, wait a minute, I'm here, I'm trying to show up for you, like, isn't this great? And for a person who experiences this level of interaction, no, it's not. The reality is it can light up a lot of internal alarms for somebody, especially when we're using that nervous system piece for a lot of us ADHDers, or trauma response. And so it's like, these are typical, and I'll be the first to admit, like, it's the what if I smell weird? The smell shame associated with a female's body, a vulva owner's body, is freaking bonkers, right? Like, so much shame around that. It's the wait, what if they're faking enthusiasm? Our brain can go there. Like, are they just showing up just for, my own sake, or are they really enjoying it? Why am I thinking about my taxes or paying bills right now when I should be enjoying this moment? I mean, so many things can go on when we're taking a scan and look at our nervous system and how it acts and reacts in situations of significant discomfort. So keep in mind, if you're somebody that's struggling with receiving oral, ask yourself, are you somebody that truly has a experience of trauma? Are you somebody with ADHD where the idea of feeling seen and all eyes on you is a little too much of discomfort because of our upbringings, right? Keep in mind, and I want to correct this right now, having ADHD, and this is where the research is, having ADHD doesn't automatically mean that you're more uncomfortable with vulnerability. That's bullshit. That has nothing to do with ADHD. But what occurs is that a lot of us ADHDers experience very similar upbringings, very similar interactions in our environments because of having ADHD. And those interactions are what makes us very uncomfortable, more likely than not, around vulnerability, around being seen and validated in a way that we're just not used to being seen and validated. So when you're laying down and oral is about to happen and all eyes are on you, it's like, what the fuck is going on? This is not normal for me. Like, red flag, run away, what the fuck? Your body hijacks and goes into a fight or flight response because that's not normal for you. That's not the typical interaction you've been used to your whole life being an ADHDer. And again, I'm going to stress it. ADHD has nothing to do with that outcome. That outcome is specifically from the interactions of your environment. And again, if you didn't have this environment and you don't have these experiences, chef's kiss, I'm so happy for you. But when we see a lot of discussions and feedback from the ADHD community, this is unfortunately more likely than not for a lot of us, right? So, okay, I'm going to just apply my chapstick here because my lips are chapped. All right. So, the myth of just let it go. Right? And I bring this up because this kind of trickles into what we're talking about, right? So here you are, somebody that is struggling to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Lay there, all eyes on you. That in itself can be so uncomfortable. And I'm going to get into sensory in a little bit, but keep in mind too, when someone's looking at you, that's a sensory experience. And so there can also be layers of feeling very overstimulated from that, plus the overstimulation and discomfort from the eyes being on you due to that vulnerability piece, right? And so a lot of people, and I've heard this so many times from my own past experiences, my clients' self disclosed experiences of just let it go, relax, enjoy yourself. How many fucking therapists out there say this shit to people? Like, it is so infuriating because, not for nothing, not only is that not ADHD friendly, it's just not trauma informed friendly. Like, saying just let it go, this isn't fucking Frozen, okay? This is real life. And if it was that freaking easy to just all of a sudden show up, dude, we would be freaking doing that all along, okay? So, one of the most common things that ends up happening is this idea of let it go. You want to enjoy it. You really do, but you can't get out of your own head. And then you start doing it to yourself. You start saying to yourself, just let it go, let it go. Just concentrate. I'm here. Just pay attention to all the sensations. And that might be the fucking problem, right? That might be the problem. You might not be capable of being able to pinpoint all those sensations. That might be overstimulating as all hell for you. Okay? So here's what I tell people all the time when they're telling me about being told, just let it go, right? You're not broken. Okay? I'm going to say that again. You are not broken. You just have a brain that requires more support to down regulate and feel safe enough to fully engage. Okay? And so that whole let go and enjoy it thing, that's not a casual instruction. That's a full-on nervous system skillet of skill sets. I don't even know if that made sense, but I'm going with it. I said it, and it's done. The deed has been done. It is a full-on nervous system skillet of skill sets. I like it. I'm branding it, patenting it. And so many ADHDers haven't had the opportunity to support the interactions to help modify that. Okay? I'm not going to say change because guess what? Here's the thing, right? This is disclaimer number 3,044,000. You're not changing your brain. Your brain is wired the way it's wired, right? Your deficits are your deficits. Now, those deficits and those experiences, especially when we're talking about our nervous system, those can be amped up by certain experiences and stressors. Those are the things we want to try to modify, right? So we're not changing how our brains are wired, but rather how we are perceiving and feeling in situations when all eyes are on us. Especially if you come from a background of past sexual shame, invalidation, or inconsistent experiences with past partners. And so receiving pleasure can feel, again, like an act of vulnerability, an act of trust, presence, okay? And for a lot of us, ADHDers, presence is not a default setting for us for a variety of reasons. And finding out your reason is going to be very important here because, like, my reason can just be maybe there's too much noise in my environment and so presence is not something I can do. Or maybe there's not enough noise going on if I'm laying back trying to receive oral, and because of that, I can't be present because I am now overstimulated by the lack of sound in my environment. So this is very unique to an individual, but you have to ask yourself, right? What is your experiences? What could be being triggered here using that ADHD lens that is causing you to feel very uncomfortable with the idea and experience of receiving oral? And it takes effort to be present. if your brain isn't something that automatically just allows you to be, plus having experiences that cause you a further disconnect to be able to be present, right? It takes effort to not dissociate. And when I say that, I do make it sound like that's a choice, because guess what? It's not. Dissociation is a very automatic, procedural, like background experience for people. It's a trauma response for a lot of people, or an overstimulated response. So when I say it takes effort to be aware of how your body is reacting in certain settings after the fact, reflecting, because that's where our jam is. That's where our strength is reflection after the fact, and asking yourself what changes need to be made next time to not allow that possible outcome of dissociation, of daydreaming, of spiraling, of getting in your head. That's the effort piece. It takes effort. You don't get to just lay there and enjoy yourself. And that fucking sucks. I'm going to be the first to say it. Having ADHD does not come with a lot of perks. It comes with a lot of areas of need for further attention. How do we manage, and what do we need to change and do? And it's trial and error. And there's an emotional thing here as well that starts occurring for a lot of people. It's a lot. But let me tell you something. When you put the energy and attention into doing this, there is a benefit that comes from it. And it doesn't lead you to having to do this all the time, right? Like, we change day to day. So there's going to be moments where you're going to have to do this again. But for the most part, when you put that effort in to just take a second afterwards and start asking yourself, like, what has been causing the disconnect to begin with, having conversations and communications, all very important, okay? So, I feel like I'm now getting on a tangent here. Anywhoozin, going back to You're Not Broken, I just want to zone into this piece right now really quickly. Because I do see, and I have personal experience around the sexual shame associated with not caring for oral, right? And not caring for oral more so because of all of the disconnects or expectations attached to it that maybe I'm not able to show up in, or clients have not been able to show up in, and that being the reason to avoid. Why do you want to try to show up to something that you feel you're sucking in, or that you're very uncomfortable with, and not understanding really the why, right? So here's a spoiler alert. You're not failing at all by any means. Your brain just needs different runways to get off the ground and spaces to kind of explore. And if you give yourself that and you feel comfortable with your partner or your partners, you can definitely start tailoring and changing outcomes to this experience. And so there's then this other piece too that I think is really important to give space to is, why ADHD in women can uniquely shape the experience, okay? Now, I'm going to give a disclaimer here. The research sucks, okay? I say this all the time. So, disclaimer here. I don't have a lot of citations. I don't have a lot of references to what I'm spewing here. But what I am spewing here is from my clinical observations, from the research we have on ADHD and sexuality, from the research that we have that's isolated to some experiences around females with ADHD. And I kind of just meshed it all together. So this episode is educational, yes, but it's not grounded in empirical data, unfortunately. And I can't wait for that to freaking change. So please understand that this information is not empirically supported at this point in time. But a lot of the things that I talk about individually are. But I kind of mesh them together from my clinical observations. Okay? So we're going to zoom in here. Because ADHD in women, vulva owners, often show up differently than in men. And there's a variety of reasons for that, okay? And it's definitely the socialization piece that is believed to be more heavily grounded in that experience rather than a biological reason. That right there is empirically sound and supported. But here's the layers that I kind of want to bring up here that's more important, okay? So first and foremost, masking. masking and performance-based self-worth. Okay? Many women with ADHD were conditioned to keep it together, like I said before, emotionally, academically, socially, right? That shows up in the bedroom, right? As feeling like we have to perform. We have to perform enjoyment rather than actually feel it, actually be present. So instead of saying that's not really working for me, bub, we fake it. We smile through it. We freeze. That also is very automatic. That masking is not something we tend to choose. That is a survival response. And when you start working on really leaning into that and becoming more aware of it, you can definitely change whether or not it comes up as quick or as often, for sure. But masking is a very common thing across the board. And for women, from my professional experience, I see it a lot more in the women I work with than the men I work with ADHD. Then you also have the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD. Again, not everyone with ADHD is going to have RSD because RSD is more grounded and rooted in a trauma response. And so not everyone is going to have this experience. There's still a lot of research being conducted on RSD. You can have rejection sensitivity, but not be considered RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. But anyway, RSD can make the idea of giving feedback to a partner feeling terrifying because if you think you're going to get criticism or rejection, you're going to shut down or you're going to get emotionally dysregulated and go from 1 to 100 and become like batshit crazy like I do with my RSD. Like I can literally look like I'm batshit crazy to people. I own it. I have a system with my husband. Him and I have had several conversations about it. I've had conversations with my children about it, about what it looks like when it happens, that it's not okay. It's not a reflection on them. It's a reflection on my nervous system and how I'm dealing with things. And it's my job to constantly challenge it, right? So when we're thinking of the idea of having to say something to our partner, that's terrifying if you have RSD. And so that's another big component of why a lot of people just avoid and or show up and fake it until you make it and you're just all discomforted, right? The other thing that's really important is the executive dysfunction piece and how it ties into sexual communication, right? So knowing what feels good isn't going to be enough here, right? That's a part. You have to know what feels good and be able to give yourself space to explore and see what works and doesn't work for you. But you also have to communicate it. And so with ADHD, organization of our thoughts, translating, right? All of this stuff, processing, speaking up at the right moment becomes very hard. Okay? And you might only realize what wasn't working after the moment has passed because guess what? A lot of us ADHDers, we shine for post reflection, not in moment reflection. Self awareness is a deficit for a lot of us, and that severity and that deficit is going to vary. So, self awareness is a post thing, not a during thing for the most part for a lot of us. Now, shame and emotional hypervigilance is another thing to be mindful here because a lot of women with ADHD go undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. And so, guess what ends up happening? We internalize for years. A lot of us, right? A lot of years of like, not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not doing good enough. That shame doesn't just disappear during sex. If you haven't worked on it, if you haven't identified it, if you don't know where and why it's there and it's just very automatic and it's just in there, it's going to come up in sex, oral including, and you're not going to know the why. And it whispers, right? And this is my funny way of saying like you're having a hallucination without having a real hallucination, right? Because it's that whispering automatic behind the scene thought of like, don't make this about you. This isn't your job to make it about you. Your job is to show up for other people, right? That is what you've been taught. You've been taught that you don't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Your needs don't matter because when you do show up and it's about you, you've been punished for it. You've been told you're a burden. Insert whatever narrative fits you here, okay? And even though oral is supposed to be about you, if you have that upbringing that was taught to you because of having ADHD and you showing up in a way that was not, quote, typical, it's not going to automatically just turn off. Okay? And so here's that other piece that kind of trickles into all of that, interoception. Okay? Interoception is the brain's ability to notice our internal physical sensations. Okay? And so if you have deficits here and your ADHD makes it harder to track what's going on in your body moment to moment, it can mean missing buildup cues or not recognizing when you're nearing your orgasm until something shifts and that moment's gone. And then you become dysregulated. Okay? All of that are very common reasons as to why a woman with ADHD can experience even a further disconnect here than when we're comparing to just a woman without ADHD in oral. And again, I'm going to remind everyone here, everything that I just spoke about, I'm using the empirical data associated with our deficits. I'm using empirical data associated with gendered roles and scripts and meshing them together because of my clinical observations when working with so many women with ADHD. And yeah, I'm going to be the person that always self-discloses. Me, as an ADHD woman, also experiencing this. My experience doesn't mean everyone's experience is that way. By no means is that a generalization, but it's an added cherry on top of the observations that I'm working with here. And so when we come back to the concept of females with ADHD, women with ADHD, that experience during oral sex isn't just about pleasure. It's about neurobiology, it's about communication, it's about shame, it's about emotional labor, trying to make your partner feel okay while you're silently losing your own experience. So if you've ever felt like oral is supposed to be this gift, but it secretly feels like a test, you're not alone. You're not broken. You don't have to pretend it's working when it's not. The complexity you're feeling has very much real roots in how your brain works, how you were socialized, and how your nervous system processes both pleasure and vulnerability. And this is why understanding the full picture of ADHD in women and vulva owners is so critical. It's not just for academics. It's not just for a diagnosis. It's also for intimacy, for connection, and shall I say, healing. And so that's the one piece of this, okay? I got like 4 more to go. I might have to do a part 2 episode to this. I really might have to. But can we concentrate now on sensory? Because that's huge. That's a huge, 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 huge common reason why a lot of people struggle with oral. You know, because sensory can be hell or it can be amazing. It kind of depends on the person. Okay? So when we talk about sensory, for neurotypicals, you know, oral sex is often described, and I'm again, disclaimer, can't be generalized here. It gets often painted as like all about the sensations, baby. Ooh, yay, right? The heat, the wetness, the rhythm, the buildup. That kind of sensory input can feel immersive in a good way for a lot of people. And then ADHD can walk into the door and it can either feel total bliss, because again, not everyone with ADHD is going to have sensory experiences in a negative way. Please be understanding of that one. Or it could be like your nervous system just got thrown into a fucking blender. Welcome to the weird, the wonderful, and the chaotic world of ADHD and sensory sensitivity, people. Okay? This is a huge component of a lot of the work I do with my clients, sensory. So I'm going to start with the basics here. Okay, ADHD sensory processing, basics, okay? ADHD isn't just about focus or forgetfulness. That's the common stigmatization around the experiences here. It also affects how the brain processes incoming sensory data. And everyone's going to vary in this. And this is why some people have a lot of sensory conflicts and others don't. And this is where we start to see patterns like sensory sensitivity, where, certain textures, temperatures, sensations feel too intense or overwhelming. Sensory seeking can occur, where our brain is craving stronger, more varied sensory input in order to feel the stimulation, to feel turned on. We need more powerful stimulation here. Then there's that other piece of sensory unpredictability, which is a huge factor as well. That's when something can feel really good one day, but unbearable the next. Talk about a clusterfuck. Because it also depends on the level of stress that you're experiencing, your hormones, your mood, whether you had a meltdown over your shoelace earlier. Yeah, that's a self-disclosure moment. And here's the kicker. Most of us are a mix of all three sometimes. Because there is no one size fits all when we're talking about ADHD, specifically when we're talking about ADHD sensory experiences. So really tapping in and starting to reflect on your sensory experiences is going to be a huge helping hand for you to trying to be as prepared as you can in these moments. Okay, so here's where sensory can show up during oral sex. This is the juice we're going to talk about here. No pun intended. I don't know if juice sounds right. Ooh, I kind of just grossed myself out a little bit there. But oral sex is basically a sensory explosion. Think of like a volcano. It's a volcano of sensory. So depending on how a person is giving oral, there's the warm breath, there's the wet tongue, slippery textures, gentle suction, or maybe intense pressure, right? There is subtle shifts or fast shifts in pressure, going from soft to intense. Rhythm, okay? Uh, let's not also forget, oh my God, I'm just cringing thinking of it. The occasional tooth scrape. I'm sure all my penis owners out there, if you're listening to this, you know that one well. We've all been there. Not that I have a penis, but I've been the one grazing my tooth here or there. Let's just normalize our experiences, please. Here, again, no BS on this podcast. So here's the thing. Like I gave you a few, insert your own experiences here, but imagine all of that hitting a nervous system that doesn't filter sensory input the same way. That's a lot. That can be a lot. That can be too little. It depends on the person. So when we're talking about ADHD, overstimulation by all of that, you can become dissociated. You can shut down. That's your body's way of protecting you from feeling very uncomfortable sometimes. And here's the other thing, right? You can tap out because some people need more. Some people need firmer pressure, faster tempos, more variety to even register it as pleasure. And that right there is a huge shame outlet for a lot of people, because there is this also level of expectation around how oral should be given and received and what you should like versus you don't like. And that is so putting people in a box. And so those who need more pressure or different types of rhythm or variety can be placed in a category of feeling you're broken. Like, oh, it should be easy. Or, why are you so difficult? Again, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about this idea of how you should also be showing up as a woman in society and how we've been taught, okay? So, everyone's different. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone's nerves are different, okay? And so for some of us, the changes mid-session can be a great thing, right? And in that moment, everything's great. And then 30 seconds later, you're like, nope, my clit is too sensitive now. Abort mission. And then if we don't have normalcy around this conversation and we don't understand what's going on, it can indeed and does lead to shame, because there's also this misconception that oral should have like a start and a finish, just like sex should. And that's not the case. Oral should just be experienced for however long it's needed, however long it's wanted. And that's it. And so for a lot of people, oral also can be kind of a frustrating experience, because if you can become too sensitive, and clitoral stimulation is how you really get your orgasms instead of penetration, if you're using penetration as a source, you now need to stop, because now you can't be touched anymore. So now sex and oral will look like you having to pause and maybe wait 15 minutes before you can start up again. And for a lot of people, that is not ideal. Well, guess what? Sometimes ideal may not be for you. Maybe you need to change it up. Maybe sex and oral needs to look different, right? So again, I'm just focusing in on these experiences to give you some normalcy here, some validation here, some empowerment, because that's not a mood swing. It's a sensory regulation in real time. That's what that is. You can go from A to B just like that. And so for women with ADHD, there's also this extra layer that I want to talk about because of gendered expectations and a chronic invalidation many women with ADHD do experience. A lot of us were taught to override our sensory cues from a young age. Think about it, right? Stop being so picky. You're too sensitive. Just deal with it. Those are my few that come to my head right now. So now as adults, right? Many women struggle to recognize their own sensory boundaries, let alone enforce them during sex. You might push through discomfort or avoid receiving altogether, not because you don't want to enjoy it, but because listening to your body doesn't feel accessible. You were taught not to. And so now, using our ADHD lens, when we're talking about the brain, our brain often again struggles with that interoception piece, being aware of the internal physical states. This can make it harder to notice when pleasure is building, harder to recognize when maybe overstimulation is creeping in, harder to communicate before something becomes too much. And so that can also lead to like the sensory drop that can kill the moment, right? Like the pattern I hear often over and over and over is you're close to an orgasm. The sensations are fucking perfect. And then your partner shifts, changes. New tongue movement, different pressure, sudden break for a compliment maybe, right? Whatever it is, poof, the magic has left the building. And your body was locked into a sensory rhythm. And ADHD brains thrive on predictability when something feels good a lot of the times. And that moment, that pattern shifts, your nervous system resets. And now you're irritated, maybe. Now maybe you're distracted, or maybe you're devastated and you're completely turned off. And because you were so ready for it and you were there and it stopped, maybe you got dysregulated and you just shut it down. How many of us experienced that, right? I mean, this just happened to me this past weekend with the egg hunt. I'm the Karen of Easter, by the way. I take my Easter egg hunts very seriously. In the first round, I was really behind. I was like the last person to find all their eggs, and I felt it. My dysregulation started to come up. I started to get very upset, and I just like in that moment, I was just like, I don't care to do this anymore. I don't even want to be around my family right now. Like that's how real dysregulation can come up for us. And so when you use that as a good example of what could happen in the bedroom, especially around oral or sex or anything that you're doing, this also can come up, right? And it becomes really hard because in that moment, you think that it's gone and all of this comes up. And if you have shame and you're not aware of how your body experiences certain deficits associated with our ADHD, you don't think to communicate. And so then you just kind of shut down. And so when we're talking about our experiences, that communication is key. The ability to give yourself some freaking grace around getting dysregulated or upset or frustrated is okay. And here's the thing. You say, hey, listen, you were so close to giving me my orgasm and I lost it. Your damn tongue had to go the wrong direction, dude. Come on now. Or ma'am. Whatever floats your boat here. You're allowed to say that. You're allowed to make a joke of it. You're allowed to say, I'm feeling very dysregulated right now because I was really interested and really excited to get that orgasm and it didn't happen. And now, if your partner is secure, if your partner doesn't experience RSD as well, maybe they can just be like, oh shit, that sucks, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the end of the world just to say what you're feeling and give yourself space, because guess what? When you don't do that, you're adding more stress. And so you're adding more fuel to your experiences and how you're interacting in your environments, right? So that's really important. Now, here's the other thing as well. The sensory processing and the trust piece is something to also tap into, because what makes receiving oral even harder for a lot of us, ADHDers and women in general, is not just about the sensation. It's about trust. Okay? And again, ADHD does not cause lack of trust in people. ADHD can create experiences from our childhood and adulthood due to lack of understanding that can lead to feeling like we can't trust. It's a learned experience. It's not an ADHD experience. ADHD does not cause it. It is a learned experience because of having ADHD and trying to interact in a neurotypical world. And again, not everyone experiences this. There are some people who have ADHD that have amazing abilities to trust. Again, you cannot generalize this shit, but I'm bringing it up because this is definitely a part of it, the part of what I work with a lot of clients on. To fully enjoy oral sex, your body has to feel safe. It has to feel grounded. It has to, feel okay and stimulated in just the right way. But if your brain feels disoriented by inconsistent pressure, hates being touched 1 minute and craves it the next, can't regulate temperature or texture input, or maybe you panic when something almost hurts, it becomes really hard to relax into that experience, to trust that experience. Because your body is sending you all these different also messages on top of it that go against the grain. And so you struggle to trust your own body, to trust your own interactions and your experiences in that moment. And so this is why so many ADHDers prefer, from what I've heard through my observations and the work I've done, prefer solo sex with masturbation. You're controlling the rhythm. You're controlling the pressure, the pattern. And there's no risk of someone randomly switching techniques while you're holding on for dear life, just trying to get that orgasm. And sometimes that is going to be what's needed. And that's going to also depend on you and what your needs are in that moment. But that doesn't mean partnered oral sex is a lost cause. It just means we need to reframe the sensory experience through a ADHD lens, have a conversation, know what you're feeling, what your needs are in that moment. Can oral sex be something that works for you today, knowing that all these things could possibly show up? If they do, having a conversation about it. All right, so cool. Have a conversation about it. How the fuck do you do that, right? A lot of you who are listening may struggle with feeling comfortable, confident, empowered when this idea of having to show up and have a conversation comes into play. And keep in mind, communicating what you want in general is not an easy thing for a lot of us ADHDers for a variety of reasons, right? And so one of those reasons is processing delays. It can be dealing with RSD if you are experiencing it. Gathering your thoughts in a way that organizes things correctly, being able to get what you're trying to say from your brain actually out in words is a huge barrier for a lot of us. So when you talk about sensory chaos and nervous system confusion, the I know what I want, but I can't seem to say it comes up very often. Or worse, I don't even know what I want. And trying to figure out that while someone's face is between my legs, it's kind of a lot of pressure, Leanne, right? And that's valid, totally valid, right? And that, my friends, is the ADHD experience of sexual communication in a nutshell for a lot of us. We're told that the key to good partnered sex is just communicate. I say it all the time, yes, but I sure as shit make sure to give you the disclaimer here. And when people just say, just communicate, as if that's a tiny thing, you toss into the mix like salt on a freaking salad. But for ADHD brains, especially ADHD brains, wrapped in a lifetime of people-pleasing, masking, shame, internalized fear of being too much, sexual communication is a high-stakes performance we never got the fucking script for. And so this is not an easy feat, and this is so important as to why setting ourselves up for success is so key here. And so why does it become hard for us? And I'm breaking this down. This is your educational 101 here. First and foremost, working memory gaps, right? ADHD brains, we struggle to hold on to multiple pieces of information at once, especially under pressure. So imagine this. You're trying to stay present in your body while tracking the sensational buildup and the pleasure, while deciding if you should say something, and then while figuring out how to say it without killing the vibe. Yeah, that is, what's the common saying for us ADHDers? Like the 4 tabs open and you forgot what the first one was, or it's lost, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, like I said, verbal processing lag. A lot of us are verbal processors, okay? Which means we don't fully know what we think until we're saying it out loud. But trying to figure out mid-oral, that's like trying to do improv during surgery. You just end up blurting. Yeah, that's good. Keep going. Even if it's not. Because you don't want to shut it down before you know how to ask for something better. The other thing you have to be mindful of using your ADHD lens is the emotional regulation. Plus RSD if you experience, because this is huge. And many women with ADHD can struggle with fear of hurting their partner's feelings. Again, social scripts, gender scripts, right? Fear of being perceived as ungrateful. Fear that feedback is going to equal conflict, is going to equal abandonment and being punished, right? You get sent back to your childhood. That's that trauma response, people. So instead of directing or adjusting, we default to the just smile and just wait it out. Maybe it'll be over soon. And then we can just go at it. Or fake an orgasm and then we can end it right here. And then we leave the experience feeling guilty, disconnected, or frustrated, which doesn't then exactly make us want to try again next time. And that in itself is a very common pattern for a lot of women, but more so women with ADHD that I see, that leads to then low sexual desire. Low sexual desire is that stressor that is affecting your desire to want to show up. When you repetitively show up in a space that is not actually giving you pleasure or you're feeling good about it, and you create continued repetitive interactions that are negative and making you feel like crap, you become learned. It's a condition, right? And so you just avoid. You avoid. And you don't even know why you're avoiding sometimes, okay? So this isn't about low sexual desire. I gotta stay on track, Leanne. Now, the last thing I want to bring up is auditory and verbal overload, okay? So trying to talk during oral sex, for a lot of women with ADHD, it's a full-on shutdown. The act of speaking pulls a person out of an embodied experience. It's a whole executive functioning task when you think about it. You have to find the words, you have to decide on the tone, calculate emotional impact, speak clearly, and make sure you don't accidentally say left when you mean right. It's a lot of fucking pressure, okay? So all of that, ADHD lens, keep in mind those are the things that can be coming up for you. That's really important to navigate and understand. Add in gender and social conditioning. Now it becomes a freaking minefield. If you were raised or socialized as a girl, chances are you were then taught, like many of us, be accommodating, avoid being too picky, not embarrass anyone, especially during sex. Your feelings don't matter. You don't want to make your partner feel bad. You want to make them feel seen, validated, heard. They're making a good effort. And keep in mind that narrative is also much heavier in heterosexual relationships because of the dynamic and the expectations placed on those roles. Now, that conditioning doesn't go away just because we know better. It lives in the body. So now you're lying there, maybe frustrated, overwhelmed, but your mouth is saying, that's great, babe. Oh, I love this. Because your nervous system doesn't want to risk conflict, even in the bedroom. And so when ADHD and communication delays collide, a lot of us ADHDers don't realize that what wasn't working until after the moment has passed, because again, we're better at reflecting after the fact. You might get in your shower after and think to yourself, oh, I think I need more pressure. Or, wait, maybe that's why it didn't work. He kept switching it up. She kept switching it up. They kept switching it up. That delayed awareness is part of our ADHD experience. And that doesn't have to be a weakness. Lean into that shit. Use it. Normalize it, right? We often need time to reflect before we can name or organize how something felt. And that makes, in the moment, again, sexual communication feel almost impossible unless we actively prepare for it ahead of time. That is setting yourself up for success. That is setting your sex up for success. That is setting your oral sex up for success. So what do we do, right? We're not going to stay stuck in the struggle. You're not, unless you want to. The good news is ADHD brains can absolutely learn and practice new patterns. But we have to do it in ways that are realistic for our wiring, working with our brains, not against it. And so I'm going to give you a few ways to start shifting the script. Now, keep in mind, this is not foolproof. This is a sprinkle of help. Use it. If it doesn't work, leave it at the door. Okay? Number one, I want you to pregame your communication. Think of it like pre-sex huddle. If you're a sports person, this is great. You can have these conversations in a totally non-sexual moment. Hey, can I tell you something that helps me stay in the moment during oral? And then say it. Maybe sometimes I need firmer pressure, and it's hard for me to say that in the moment. Can we come up with a signal? Put a fucking dry erase board on your wall if you want. Put the message on the fucking board. Have it in front of you where you're normally laying and doing your stuff. There you go. Physical. Setting your environment up. That is okay. Okay? Planning before arousal kicks in and desire is maybe there, it removes the executive functioning burden from the moment itself, because now you're not relying on this. You can't. If there's deficits in your brain, which there are, we have deficits, you can't rely on it. So you have to do things in a way that works with your brain. Now, the second thing, use your sensory and your visual signals. Talking mid-orgasm buildup may not be ideal. Cool, got it, check. Try taping patterns. Hand squeezes. Even a fun code word for saying stay just like that. I do this with my clients all the time. Talking, trying to achieve an orgasm doesn't work. I got you. Prior to engagement, find a code that works. I have some clients that like the shoulder squeeze because it's still erotic, it's still sexy, it's still nice, but it means something. Okay? And it's like, oh, okay, I got it. Especially when you're thinking of oral and how it's set up, being able to touch someone's body part that's closer to you where you don't have to strain and lean in more and now really affect your positioning yourself, making it work, right? And lean into your relationship. If you're in a relationship, use this as a fun platform to explore together and find fun ways to create a unspoken message for you to be able to say. That means keep it going. Do that. That thing that you're doing right now, don't you fucking stop. Right? The other thing that is really important is having that aftercare debrief. Okay? Without any freaking shame. Okay, and I say that as if that's easy. If this is a process and this is new to you, obviously, shame is not just going to miraculously leave. But doing these things over and over and over again and changing up is going to help minimize and pierce away at that freaking shame. And so after sex, when the pressure's off, which is often the best time, by the way, for a lot of us ADHDers to reflect, it's okay to say, hey, I realized something that could help me next time. Or, I really loved when you did this. But I think I lost it when the rhythm changed. right? That's not criticism, it's feedback. And feedback is connection when delivered with care. And if you and your partner or partners have conversations beforehand to let them know that we're going to give each other feedback and it's not criticism, and if you feel criticized, I'm here for you. I'm here to help challenge that in the moment, because if they have RSD or they are also struggling, because let's say you're in a relationship with someone else who has ADHD, having conversations and normalizing that it's an experience and it's going to happen and that you're going to be in their corner and you're going to work as a team isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. It helps you create the space to actually show up in a different way instead of continuously avoiding it. And here's the other thing. I want you to start practicing in non-sexual scenarios. All of this. So if you struggle to advocate for yourself in bed, it might not be the best time to try all of a sudden miraculously in sex. That's a high stake then maybe for you. You need maybe something more low stake. Low stake moments can be saying no to a dinner you don't want to attend, right? Asking a friend to clarify what they need instead of just like assuming it and leaving yourself into a state of discomfort because you didn't want to ask and be a bother. Saying, no, actually, I prefer this. Or this is a good one. This is how I practice in restaurants. Anytime someone would serve me something incorrectly, I would always be the type of person to be like, okay, whatever. I started using that as my space. That for me was a low stake. That might be too high for some people, but that also could be considered a low stake depending on where you're at. Now, at the end of the day, you deserve to be heard, even in bed. And so having conversations isn't about punishment, it's about reward. But you're not going to be able to see it that way if you're still struggling with all those messages you learned growing up around people pleasing, shutting down, your pleasure doesn't matter. So there is a lot of work here that has to be done on top of everything that I'm outlining. And this is why this is considered a sprinkle of help. Now, going back to other factors that can play into a possible disconnect here for a lot of people, one of the other things that we talk about in my work with my clients is that, the orgasm tease, right? And the trust fall of receiving, okay? So that moment, I'm going to say every ADHD vulva owner dreads, but I think this is just anyone in general. But because we're talking about ADHD, I'm going to stay on the theme. It's you're on edge, your body is finally cooperating, your brain is mostly quiet, your partner is doing exactly the thing you like, and you think to yourself, don't move, don't stop, just stay there, and then bam, bada boom, they stop, they switch it up, and just like that, the orgasm disappears. Welcome to the heartbreak of oral sex. The orgasm that almost was, right? And so why that moment can be so devastating when we're using an ADHD lens is a few things, right? Because when we look at neurotypical brains, often the recover from a missed orgasm with some playful teasing or, we'll get it next time, woohoo, right? But for ADHD brains, not so much, right? We don't let it go. We kind of grieve, we spiral, we can instantly start overanalyzing, becoming hyper-focused into it, saying things like, why did they change what was working? Should I say something? Will that ruin the mood? Again, you're getting all in your head, right? That might sound dramatic, but for a lot of us ADHDers, this isn't just about frustration. It's about the dysregulation piece. And that sudden drop from almost there to lost it entirely isn't just physical. It's emotional. And sometimes even a little existential. Truly, depending on your experience. And so orgasm being a rhythm and ADHD needs to be a rhythm to focus is another piece here. And I'm going to make that make sense because I think I just said it and I don't know if that made sense. So what I mean by that is, where the ADHD brain wiring comes in strong, oral sex that's working often provides predictable rhythm, consistent pressure, sustained focus. And again, guess what ADHD brains love? Stimulating patterns that don't require constant adaptation. That's nice, right? We like that. When your partner finds a rhythm and sticks with it, your brain finally gets to let go. You don't have to be tapped in as much, right? You're finally able to possibly relax. So when that rhythm breaks, it's not a minor shift. It's a full-on neurological interruption. Like I said before, a little while ago. It's like your internal pleasure app just force quit with no warning and it's crashed. And that's why a lot of us ADHDers feel intense disappointment in that moment. It's not just, oh, too bad. It's, I had one job to get there. And we were almost there. And now I'm back at square one with zero momentum and a nervous system that's low-key fucking sulking. And keep in mind, the other big pressure here is when you go into oral with the idea of the goal being orgasm, you're already placing pressure on yourself. Sometimes oral doesn't have to lead to an orgasm, okay? I want to throw that one out there. That's another big area of conversation I have with a lot of my clients. And so going back to the dysregulation, emotional intensity, and that trust falling piece that I was talking about before, receiving oral when done well in what works for your body, it's a full trust fall. You're handing over control of your body's most vulnerable parts to someone else. You're trusting them. You're trusting them to stay attuned, read your body, not switch to some weird spiraling tongue move mid-orgasm buildup where you're like, what the fuck is going on? And that's a huge ask for anybody's brain. But when we look again through an ADHD lens, especially those with a history of feeling misunderstood, not listened to, emotionally neglected, that trust fall can feel like an emotional cliff dive. That can become a trigger. And when someone breaks that momentum, you might not just lose the orgasm, you lose the trust possibly. The next time will be different. So what do? We retreat. We mask. We go, it's fine. When it's very much not fine. And here then comes the shame spiral I was talking about. Because let's not forget the aftershocks of this moment, right? You're disappointed. But then you feel bad for being disappointed. So then you start performing gratitude instead of expressing your needs. Cue ADHD shame spiral, right? I'm ungrateful. I should have said something. Why can't I just enjoy the sex like a normal person? They were trying so hard. Why do I feel annoyed? Why can't I just be okay with what I have, right? And let me tell you something. If your rejection sensitivity kicks in, forget it. You'll either shut down emotionally to start pretending it was amazing just to protect their feelings, even though inside you're mourning what could have been done. But wait, let me just come back with some hope here, right? Because this isn't hopeless. It's just untended. Again, because if you're doing things that aren't meant for your ADHD brain, we're doing things wrong. So this is the moment where most ADHD women start believing something is wrong with them. That maybe they're just not built for partnered pleasure. But here is the huge truth. Shall I dare say it? You're not broken. You're just not being supported in a way that matches your nervous system and how your brain is wired. I am going to repeat that over and over and over again. Repetition here, people. And here's what else is true. Your pleasure matters. Your frustration is so valid. Your need for consistency isn't high maintenance, it's neurological. And your orgasms aren't mythical. They're just being hijacked by a lack of possible attunement, communication gaps, and even maybe ADHD processing speeds. So then this leads us to the what can you do, right? So here's a few ways to make the trust fall feel less terrifying if you're experiencing it. Number one, let your partner know what rhythm means to your brain, okay? Literally say, if something's working, don't change it unless I say to. Even if you think it's boring, my body needs that consistency. I'll let you know if I need a change. Number two, practice giving real-time feedback without pressure. You can say things like, that thing you're doing before, that was the thing. If you go back to that, we're golden. And also give yourself a little extra cushion here by saying to your partner beforehand, hey, listen, I'm going to be practicing some in real-time communication if I'm able to. So bear with me. I think the goal here today is not necessarily oral to orgasm. It's oral for me to practice how to effectively communicate my needs. When you even change up your expectations of why you're showing up, that in itself can be a game changer. And number 3, I want you to reframe orgasm as a team effort, not just a solo mission. Because this isn't about someone, giving you an orgasm. It's about your body and their attention collaborating. And just like any collaboration, it's going to require that communication, that safety, and that flexibility. And again, please be mindful and kind to yourself. The communication isn't always easy. So it is going to be trial and error and finding out what works for you and what other barriers might need to be worked on first before you're effectively able to communicate in a way that's going to work. And I think the last one that I want to bring up here is that let yourself grieve the missed orgasm. Again, it doesn't always have to be about an orgasm, but don't turn it into proof you're broken, right? Don't allow it to be a fixed mindset. Yes, it sucks when it doesn't happen. We've all been there, but that doesn't mean it never will. And it's very hard for us ADHDers to feel anything other than in the moment, right? We're in the moment kind of people with how our brains work. So it's very hard for us to understand that there is another time. That also feels very overwhelming. So trying to place and create a space of grief and kindness and a reminder in your environment is also going to be very helpful here. And to go back again, it doesn't mean you have to pretend you're okay when you're not. Don't do that to yourself. You're allowed to say, oh, fuck, I wish I could have gotten that orgasm. That fucking sucks. But you're waking up tomorrow, hopefully, right? Tomorrow's a new day. Yeah, it sucks. You didn't have it. Don't ignore the suckiness. Don't do that to yourself. You're allowed to say it sucks. It sucks, right? So, how can you make oral feel better then, right? So we're talking about communication, right? We got all that done. We talked about sensory being an issue. We talk about the narratives and the scripts and the roles and the expectations that could be showing up. We talked about how ADHD brains can possibly be showing up and how that can affect us and our experiences, etc. So what can we possibly do then, on top of everything that I've just described, of how to make oral feel better, ADHD style, okay? Okay, so let's talk solutions. Solutions that, again, can't be promised for everyone here. Again, sprinkle of help. Try them out. Doesn't work. Nothing's wrong with you. Just didn't work for you. Maybe you're not ready for it, okay? Because even though receiving oral can feel like an obstacle for a lot of us, it doesn't have to stay that way, just like anything else. And with the right approaches, the right environment, the right partner, oral sex can actually become something that may feel not only safe, but deeply pleasurable. So if you're thinking, oh, okay, I want to enjoy this, but I need more control, less pressure, and a brain that doesn't interrupt me mid-orgasms with thoughts about grocery lists, taxes, bills, etc. This one is going to be for you, okay? So let's break down how to make oral sex more ADHD friendly, one layer at a time here. So number 1, set the scene, because your brain can't turn off in chaos. So your environment, like I always say, matters more than you think. And ADHD brains are easily distracted by, the typical random noises, the lighting. It can be too harsh, too dim, clutter in the room, blankets, sheets, they can feel scratchy. If you have a dog, the dog licking its paw in the hallway, if you can hear that, all of these things, right? Your surroundings are pulling your focus. Your body can't fully drop in. So take control of sensory inputs before you get started. So use soft lighting or candles if you know that this is an effect for you. Scented ones may be great, but if you feel you're going to be too sensitive to that, go with the unscented, right? Choose music that helps your brain lock into rhythm. So slow, repetitive, sensual, all these things are going to be trial and error, by the way. You can't just throw a candle in your environment and say, okay, now we're good. That's an unrealistic expectation. This is trial and error here, okay? Same thing with the music. I've tried music because I am overstimulated in silence. So I have to create like a playlist. And that playlist creation has been trial and error, because if I'm listening to a song that is too distracting, now I'm disconnected, okay? So all of this, trial and error. Keep the space clean if you can, right? In a way that may work for you mentally. So if you're somebody that maybe just needs the laundry baskets or the clothes to be in a laundry basket for you to feel a little bit more calm and grounded in that environment, cool. Again, this is going to be very individualized to you. And the ADHD translation here is that your pleasure deserves a stage that's not competing with your brain's entire notification center. So again, takes energy, effort, attention to kind of start thinking about these things after, okay? Number 2, establish a signal system so you don't have to talk through it, right? So again, verbal communication during oral can really create a disconnect here. So having those low pressure signal systems ahead of time can be very helpful. It's also fun. So a tap on the arm can mean keep it going. Keep doing that. I like that. Maybe if you're individuals that like to hold hands or you enjoy hand touching, squeeze the hand to say, hey, please slow down or take a break. A whispered code word like anchor. That's the spot. Stay there. Now keep in mind with this, don't choose 3 million different code words because guess what? Our working memory is shot to fucking shit here. And so unless you have this written on a board or a post note in your environment, don't overwhelm your memory system that already has a deficit. Take things slow and steady. Figure out what is the code word or the symbol that's going to be the most helpful in achieving connection and also whatever goal it is you're looking for. Start there, okay? The other thing is rehearse receiving. I know that sounds weird, but yes, literally rehearse receiving. Many of us are uncomfortable with that vulnerability, like I said before. And so rehearsing doesn't hurt. It actually can really help. It creates experiences that are really beneficial, right? And so start small, right? Let someone else pick up the check without deflecting. Again, low stake versus high stake. Don't just try to all of a sudden jump into the bedroom with this stuff. Accept a compliment without adding, oh, stop it, it's nothing. Say yes to someone offering support without guilt. Or have the guilt, but still do it. And then ask yourself, why are you feeling guilty? Is it because of an actual reason, or is it from your past experiences? Is it your past automatically coming up for you, right? Then you want to start applying that mindset to your sexual experiences, right? My pleasure is not a burden. This is allowed to be about me. I can take up space here. You even practice saying affirming phrases to yourself while receiving oral. Seriously. Talk to your nervous system like a small overstimulated animal. We're safe. We're allowed to enjoy this. Nothing bad is happening. Again, practicing this, knowing that the expectation is you're showing up in oral to practice this, not to achieve an orgasm. That also is very important here. Don't show up thinking you're going to be playing and having a good time per se. Rather, fix your expectation to match what you're doing. And so if what you're trying to do is practice, feeling comfortable, then that is the expectation. That is the goal of that interaction. And your partner is an active participant in that. Okay? Another thing is anchor your attention. Now, dissociation is real. And a lot of us float away during sex for a variety of reasons, and that's going to vary from person to person. So, anchor cues can be helpful, but again, I kind of leave this towards my last area of, option, only because I feel like anchor cues also, again, still rely on your executive functioning in a way that maybe you're not going to be able to produce. But again, if maybe you're somebody that's okay with physical reminders in your environment to do this, this can be helpful. So anchor cues are really there to help us stay present. So grabbing onto the bed sheets or a pillow. Give your hands a physical job, doing something. Pressing your feet firmly into the mattress. Again, you're giving yourself something to do, focusing on one detail, maybe their breath on your thigh, the rhythm of the movements, specific sound in the music. Again, all of this can help, but again, all of these things that I'm advising to try, you have to engage with the goal of just trying this. Don't try to show up silently without engaging with your partner and letting them know, hey, listen, today I really am going to try anchor cues. I'd like to see if this can help me. And so I'm going to be focusing more on that interaction while you're doing this. Okay? Teamwork. And I think the number 2 bigger things is embracing the aftercare and having conversations after and saying what was amazing, what maybe you did or how you did it that you can let your partner know, but also letting go of the orgasm obsession while still honoring your pleasure. Like, again, an orgasm doesn't have to be an Olympic event, and your partner is not being graded. This should be about fun. This should be about exploration. And just like anything else, if you've never been taught how to show up in a way that works for you, well, guess what? You have to learn. It's a skill that now you're learning. So you can't just keep showing up pretending to do a skill that you've never had any interaction with in a way that works with your brain. So it is a teamwork approach, or it is a approach that demands some level of comfort and communication. That's not to say you can't go into these experiences trying to do this independently in terms of you knowing like, okay, I'm showing up not to have an orgasm, but focus on this. But then you have to be very okay with the fact that if you're faking an orgasm, you're doing it because you've realized faking the orgasm is an easier way of you showing up and practicing this skill set than currently trying to talk to your partner about it. However, I will say if that's the dynamic you have, really ask yourself, is that a you thing or is that a healthy versus an unhealthy dynamic in your relationship, which is a whole other conversation. So, all of this is to say, oral sex can be hard. It can be beautiful. It can be frustrating and healing even, sometimes all at once. But when you start aligning your sexual experiences with your brain and how it works, not how porn, textbooks, friends, partners, all of that say should be, you start to reclaim something that so many of us have been disconnected from, which is deserved, guilt-free, embodied pleasure. That's it. That's not extra. That's not indulgent. That's mental health. And you're allowed to want it. All right, let's answer a question that was submitted anonymously. I'm going to read it word for word for those of you not watching the video. The question was, I think I'm struggling to communicate with my partner and what I want and getting a little lost in that. We are both women, early 30s, who are newish to our bisexuality and have mostly been with men previously. She seems very able to articulate what works for her on the receiving end, and I have felt what I like before, and often it's great with her, but sometimes it's not working or like as good as I have experienced with some men before, and I know we're both new to this. So that's definitely part of it. But the main point is, I don't know how to say what I want because it doesn't feel clear when I'm experiencing the feelings in my body. So part of me doesn't know what I need, and it doesn't feel like I can figure it out by solo play because I can't perform oral on myself. Oh God, I wish we could, right? Maybe not. Not sure if that makes sense, but any thoughts or direction on articulating want and need when you're overwhelmed by sensation too would be awesome. Thank you. So first and foremost, thank you so much for your question. I am so excited to get into the nitty-gritties of what I would like to offer as a response. So again, thank you again for your thoughtful and vulnerable question here. It makes sense. So let's start here. What you're describing is incredibly common, especially when we're looking at ADHDers' experiences, bisexual women, vulva owners, and people exploring all those like new relational and sexual territories like you just described. And there's a unique mix of excitement, pressure, uncertainty that comes with navigating same gender, same intimacy, especially after years of dealing and interacting with heteronormative scripts, right? Those expectations. So when our bodies don't give us super clear, consistent cues in the moment, that can also amp it up. So I'm going to break this down in hopefully digestible parts. So the first part you mentioned is that you don't know how to say what you want because it doesn't feel clear in your body. And this is actually very ADHD and neurodivergent of you. Like I said in the episode, this interoception, this ability to really feel yourself makes total sense. And that sensation of being overwhelmed by input and unable to translate it into a direction, that's the processing bottleneck, if you will, right? When you're receiving the stimulation, especially from someone you care about and you're really excited to be present with, your brain is struggling. It's juggling to interpret the sensation, tracking your partner's experience, managing maybe expectations, depending on if they're there, decoding emotions, seeing if they're still present. Are they enjoying it? Are they liking it? Attempting to even then, again, find those words in real time. That's a lot. So, clarity disappears. That makes total sense, right? And you don't need to have a play-by-play to be a good communicator, okay? So often we think that giving feedback during sex has to sound like move your tongue slightly to the left, increase pressure by 2%, right? In reality, it can actually sound like, wow, that actually feels amazing. Stay with that. You don't need to name it, right? Or I'm not sure what I want yet, but can maybe you slow down while I feel it out and use that as just the momentum, the drive, right? Maybe even say something like, can we just pause for a sec while I catch up with my body? I just want to process this. Again, like I said in the episode, sometimes changing the expectation of why you're showing up for oral is going to be very helpful here. And you're not allowed to not know in the moment and say so. Okay? It's totally normal. That's still being communicative. Like telling your partner, hey, listen, I'm struggling. I want to be able to tell you how I want it, how I like it, but like, holy crap, this is really hard. This is confusing. Bear with me. Are you willing to come down this journey with me? Just process it in that way, right? Stay attuned as best as you can through communication. You're not mind readers. So that communication can still occur without you knowing from start to finish like a sentence of direction, if that makes sense. And when you mentioned also, I can't figure out with solo play because I can't perform oral on myself. That is, yes, valid and also hilarious in the most relatable way. But also, solo play isn't just about technique. It's about building internal awareness. So you can actually try using solo time to explore maybe sensory patterns, right? Explore those firm pressures versus soft, consistent versus varied. You can use a vibrator for this as well. Vibrators have settings where they go from like low to high, right? And the pressure can change as well on that too. You can notice when you start to feel overwhelmed, right? What helps you regulate? Give yourself that space to practice when something feels oversensitive, and what are the approaches you need or can reflect on in the moment to help you come back down so you can go back into it when you're ready. Right? You can also use solo time to practice talking out loud. If no one's there, just to get your brain used to linking sensation to also language. Now, you're not going to be able to train your ADHD brain to all of a sudden be able to hold these masterful levels of interoception, but what you can do is teach yourself a new skill in some capacity. And if you're not used to practicing to talk to yourself during experiences in a way that's attached to, like, let's say the sensation and the language, you can teach yourself through experience and repetition. And so it becomes a little easier for you to tap into that skill set. And so like a good example of just saying things like, okay, I'm using more pressure now. That feels grounding. Or I'm using more pressure now. Never fucking do that again, right? It's hard to focus. It's too overstimulating. That can be very helpful. So you can still use solo playtime here. The other part that you also stated was my partner seems to know what she likes and I don't, right? That dynamic happens a lot in queer relationships. It happens a lot in a lot of relationships, but we see a pattern in queer relationships where one person seems more confident or embodied than the other. And again, that can happen to anybody, and it doesn't mean you're behind. It just means you're still discovering your language, right? And that's not a flaw. That's actually beautiful. That means you're growing and you're learning. That could be exciting. Lean into that curiosity instead of seeing it as a fear or a burden, right? And you can try framing things this way to your partner of like, sometimes I can't translate what I'm feeling, but I really want to figure it out together. Can we experiment, right? Can we slow it down so I can tune in a little bit better here? Because what you're doing, you're inviting them, not putting pressure on yourself to be the fluent person in the language you're just trying learning, right? It's teamwork. And there's this bonus of this too, where you can create like almost like sensation mapping, right? You can try this together where you can have your partner touch different areas around your vulva and your clitoris. like light, firm, still, slow. You can figure out what works for you or what kind of rules you want through this. And all you have to do is rate each one yes, maybe, or nope. Okay, again, this is an activity where there's no expectation for orgasm or anything outside of you just using it as a space to explore, right? No performance, no goal, just curiosity. Being mindful also going into this, what sensory touches and stuff may already turn you off or may disconnect you. Be mindful of that going into this type of activity, because you want to just make sure you're being mindful of anything that would cause a disconnect to begin with. And what this actually does is it builds that internal vocabulary and helps you and your partner learn and map without relying on you to do all of the explaining in real time, because that's really unfair and kind of sucky, right? It's such a drain to have to always be the one to say and do. Lean into your partnership. You're a team for a reason, right? Lean into it. This is no different. And so bottom line, you're not broken, because it takes time to understand your own body, especially in new relational contexts. And when we're using our ADHD lens, that also has an effect. And you don't need to know all the answers to invite connection, curiosity, exploration, mutual learning. Not for nothing, it's a beautiful messiness of intimacy. And you're doing it right. And I hope that helped. And in the future, if anyone is interested in submitting any questions, please feel free. I will always be answering questions at the end of my episodes, especially on topics that they resonate with. Thank you all for joining me today. I know this was a long episode, and I really hope from start to finish it makes sense. I know it was very repetitive, and I think I do that purposely because just how my brain works. But it's really important to understand that these approaches, this conversation isn't just straightforward. And we have to give ourselves grace to it. And I know saying give ourselves grace to it isn't the most easiest thing, but it is the most important thing. And so again, if this is a hard thing for you and this episode's helpful, but maybe you need more support, reach out to a qualified professional. You don't have to do it alone. Open up conversations with your partner in a way that works with your brain instead of against it. Share this episode with your partner. Maybe this will help them better understand so you don't have to talk to them about it. I think this is another reason these episodes are here. Use this as an accommodation. And if you know somebody that could benefit from this episode, please share it, subscribe, put in your questions on topics. I'm here to help and guide and support and validate as best as I can. And as always, it's all about setting your environments, your relationship, and your sex up for success in a way that works with our ADHD brains and not against them. Until next time, everyone, be well.